Hi, this is Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop, and today we're going to be talking about the most important pieces of gear in your studio. More specifically, how to determine what are the most important pieces of gear in your studio. Where should you be spending your hard-earned money when you're looking to make upgrades in your studio? And I think I can give you a framework and a kind of filter to use to help make you much better purchasing decisions when you're out there thinking about buying new gear. You'll waste a lot less money. Trust me on that. I've done it. But also to help inform your production decisions in the studio. There really is, in my opinion, an order of importance that's really clear when it comes to studio gear. The things you should get right first and the things you should worry about later. And thinking about this order of importance in the signal chain is a huge kind of mind shift for a lot of people. And when you finally get it, it sticks. And I think you'll just make a lot better decisions, sweat the small and unimportant stuff less, and really put your attention, energy, and resources on the things that are going to give you the biggest wins in audio and music production. The big concept I'm going to give you here right off the bat is that in general, all of your audio gear, all the things in your studio are more important the closer you get to zero. Or phrased another way, all of your audio gear is more important the closer you get to the signal source. And I want to give you some concrete ways of thinking about this. I'll give you some examples and we'll kind of talk through some of the possible exceptions. But this way of thinking that things are more important the closer they get to zero, the closer they get to the signal source, I think it really helped inform my thinking, my prioritization in the studio, and I think it can do the same for you. Before we get into it, the briefest of sponsor shoutouts. The number one sponsor for this podcast is you. And how do you sponsor this podcast? By smashing the ever-loving daylights out of the like button down there. Just give it a tap, and then if you tap it really so hard that it smashes, I think that's what you're supposed to do. I'm told by people on YouTube that just tapping it gently is good, but like smashing it and making it explode is apparently better. That's why I've been informed by the YouTube algorithm people. Also, a big shout out to Eventide, making some of my favorite hardware effects and plugins out there. Check them out, eventideaudio.com. You can try out any of their software for free, and they make some incredibly cool and fun hardware effects. Also check out Soundtoys, making some more of my favorite plugins in the known universe. Check them out at soundtoys.com, where you can try out anything they make for free. All right, now back on to what are the most important pieces of gear in your chain. Like I said at the very beginning, the closer you get to zero, the closer you get to the beginning of your audio chain, the more important each piece of gear is. So let's take that on the input side real quick. The most important piece of gear in your audio recording chain is not your interface. It's not your converters. It's not your mic preamp. You really have to go backwards from there. Do different interfaces, different A to D converters sound different? They can, yeah. And actually, a lot of the big differences in converters, really high-end converters compared to less expensive converters, are actually often found in the analog parts of that signal chain. So this principle holds true even when you're talking about the end of the recording chain. Your A to D converter, the most important part of that is not really the A to D conversion part, but the analog part that comes before the A to D conversion part. But there are things that are probably more important and going to make a bigger difference than your A to D conversion in this day and age. And I would say that mic preamps in general are going to make more of a difference than your A to D converters. There are going to be some exceptions here, but in general, there can be bigger differences in that analog part of the chain than the actual A to D conversion part of the chain, and preamps are no exception here. You can have preamps that sound somewhat different from each other. But the differences between mic preamps, let's be honest, if you have done enough blind testing of mic preamps, and although you might be able to tell certain mic preamps from one another reliably, and some others you may not be able to, blind. The much more important thing than that is your microphone. Oh my goodness. The differences in microphones are so much more significant than mic preamps. And I've got to say, Mic preamps are a little overrated. That said, I love mic preamps, and you can actually hear me do a recent video where I try out a bunch of different mic preamps virtually through Universal Audio, and you can hear me trying on really quickly a bunch of different emulations of old school analog preamps. And if you just listen to the preamp portion, there will be some slight subtle differences some of the time. In other cases, it's not that significant. In some cases, it's, noticeable. But the differences there are so much smaller than the differences in general between two different models of microphone. You can actually hear a video I just put out yesterday where I compare this Shure SM7 to a lavalier mic to a microphone I was taking a look at that day. It was the JZ Microphones Amethyst. And you can hear that Amethyst, which is kind of like a U67, U87-ish microphone compared to the Shure SM7B. And it's a really significant difference, much more significant than between pretty much any two mic preamps. But even within the same family or category of microphone, there's often going to be more significant differences than between two preamps. If you compare the Shure SM7B to a Shure SM57 or an SM58, they're actually going to sound fairly close. There are going to be some differences. But if you compare two preamps of a similar design from a similar company, chances are they're going to sound really, really close, much closer than the two different microphone models. But this kind of thinking doesn't stop there. It does not end there. If you go further back in the chain, the next part of your chain before the microphone is the room. Yeah, the room comes before any sound waves from your actual signal source hit the microphone. And I've got to tell you, if you gave me the choice of having a fancy $3,000 microphone in a totally untreated room or a pretty good, $300 microphone in a well-treated room, chances are for most purposes, that $300 microphone in the decently treated room is going to sound better than the much fancier microphone in an untreated room. So this is a really important principle. As we go further back in the recording chain, the more important things become. One of the classic examples of what's that crazy sound they got that people always bring up is Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks, that big, reverberant, heavy-duty drum sound. What preamps were they using on that? I'm sure you could find out. Does it matter the most out of everything else in that signal chain? What microphones were they using? Well, I think on that it was a Bayer M160. And to the fact that they were using, if I'm correct in my remembrance here, that kind of ribbon microphone, important compared to if they had used an AKG 414 or a Neumann U87 to give it a different character. Yes, absolutely. But are any of those things, the tape machine they use, the preamp they use, even the microphone they use, is it as important as, oh my God, you recorded those drums from at 50 yards away in a stairwell? That is the big crux of it, the huge, most important part of it. But there's another, even more important part than the room that you're in. And I hope it's occurring to you already. And that is the instrument and the player. And the instrument is pretty significant. I mean, if instead of John Bonham's huge drum kit with his, really big kick drum, and he used pretty big drums tuned in a specific way, if instead of that kit, you put him on like a child's kit with, like a little 8-inch kick drum or something, and it would be a totally different sound. So the instrument is important. And the same thing goes when you're recording guitars, if you're recording electric guitars or synths or, through a guitar amp. Making changes there can often be much more significant than making a change at the microphone. And I hope you see where I'm going with this. Even more important than the instrument, for that When the Levee Breaks example, it's John Bonham playing that kit. If you put me on that kit playing the same thing, and I could actually kind of play that part. I'm not a terribly good drummer. I did play drums in bands when I was like my early 20s. I also played guitar in bands and bass in bands and other things. I wasn't a terribly good drummer, but I could kind of play that part. It's not going to sound like John Bonham. I can promise you that. So the actual player, the musician, and before that, arguably the song, the material they're playing. And when we get to that part of the performer versus the song, I don't know. which to tell you is more important. I don't have an answer for that one. It's really not as neat. We could argue back and forth about that. If you want to, make your case for what's more important, the performer or the song, the arrangement or the performance of it. If you want to make your case for that down below, I'd really love to hear your comments on it. I want to think through that one more myself. So I don't have an answer on that. But I'll say that combination of the song arrangement performer, way more important than the instrument that they're playing on. But in turn, the instrument you're playing on, to a degree, it's probably neck and neck with the room, but arguably maybe more important than the room, although I'm having a little trouble with that one. But I'll tell you that room and that instrument, definitely more important than the specific microphone used in the vast majority of cases, with a very few number of exceptions, like a totally broken microphone or it's a Yamaha sub kick that you're using to capture an orchestra. Those few things, extremes aside, the microphone's gonna be less important than those things before it. But that microphone going to be really significantly more important than the mic preamp and other analog electronic devices, compressors, and EQs that it passes through. I'm saying that it passes through. Obviously, if you're making a big change with a compressor and EQ, that can be really powerful and really change your sound. But comparing the model of EQ and the model of compressor, assuming that you're making these same exact kinds of changes with each EQ or compressor, probably going to be a little bit less significant than the microphone and the microphone placement and the instrument in the room and the player, etc. So what I mean is that if you have a Pultec EQ and a knockoff of a Pultec EQ, and you're doing the same kinds of settings on both, or at least turning the knobs even if they point in different directions, so you're doing the same kind of thing to the signal, the differences between those two units probably most of the time going to be less significant than the difference between two microphones. You can give me some possible far-out exceptions to this. But in general, comparing like with like, I really think this rule holds. And all that analog stuff, including the analog stuff that is in your A to D converter, that stuff is also going to be more important than the actual A to D conversion chip. In many cases, a lot of different models of A to D converters are using the same kind of A to D conversion chips. The analog part is what's different. Now, this same thing applies 100% in reverse when we're talking about the output, right? So what is the most important part of your output chain? Well, it's not your D to A converter. And honestly, your amplifier, which you're going to hit before the actual physical moving speaker, the amplifier is going to be less important than the speaker itself. And the speaker, to a degree, is less important than the room it's in. And this may sound like sacrilege to a degree, but again, I would much rather have a good $1,000, $1,500 set of speakers in a well-treated room than a $10,000 or more set of speakers in an untreated room. There's just no doubt about it which one of those is going to give me a more accurate picture of what's actually going on. I'd rather have a $300, $400 set of speakers in an untreated room than that $1,500 or more set of speakers in an untreated room. So that is absolutely huge as well. And I think it was interesting, I actually read on the SonarWorks blog at some point where they compared a bunch of different models of speakers in an untreated room, before and after they put the EQ correction on. But the differences between speakers were so much smaller than the differences caused by the resonances within the room. So I hope that I've gone on about this long enough. The most important things when it comes to your actual gear, I've got to say, are the people you're working with, the people making the music. That is the number one thing that's going to make or break a good recording or a bad recording, getting the performers right and the actual material right. Which one of those is more important? It's hard to say. They really work together. And I'm sure you have some favorite artists where you're like, I hate hearing that song from them. So maybe the song's more important. But then I'm sure that there's certain songs where even when you hear a mediocre lounge version of it, it kind of still moves you because there's something about the structure of that song and what it brings back to you. So I don't know there. But the people and the performance, number one. Number two, I'd say what they're playing on and the environment that they're playing it in. And after that comes microphones, with everything else getting a little bit less important as you go down the chain, if we're talking about just passing signal through it. So, one big takeaway here in music production in general is that the more you can get things right towards the beginning, the better off you are. And I could do a whole episode just about that idea, about decision making in music production, and maybe someday I will. For now, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope this has been useful for you. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have there been places where this has proved true in your own life? Let me know about it in the comments down below. I really want to hear from you on this one. I'd love your stories about this. Or if you think I'm totally wrong and you can think about some exceptions to this, please let me know in the comments below. I might go down there and think through some of these ideas with you, because I think in many cases where you're going to say that this isn't quite right, I think there's going to be some caveat where I could say, I don't know, did you think about this way? I'd love to have that conversation with you. So make your comments in the comments down below. I'll read all of them, and early on I'll respond to as many of them as I can. I hope this one has been useful for you. This has been Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop. Big thanks to you for smashing that like button. Also remember to subscribe, hit that notifications bell to make sure you don't miss any more great podcast episodes like this one. Also, if you haven't already, go to sonicscoop.com, sign up for the newsletter there. We're doing giveaways every other week. We've been doing giveaways every other week for like a decade. I don't know why I don't talk about this more on the podcast. I just figure everybody knows we give away more than $100,000 worth of free gear every year at sonicscoop.com/contest. So definitely check it out there. Even if you're listening to this a long time in the future, sonicscoop.com/contest, you'll find our giveaways there. But more importantly, a lot of great articles on the site. And if you get our newsletter, you'll get a once weekly blast of all of the best stories from Sonic Scoop of that week. Big shout out to Soundtoys for sponsoring this episode once again. Try out some of my favorite plugins at soundtoys.com and try some of my favorite hardware and software effects over at eventideaudio.com. Here's the fun thing, the big caveat I will give you is when you start talking about things like reverbs and EQs and compressors and all that stuff, they kind of become instruments. And I will say that even though the exact EQ or compressor that you pass through or reverb doesn't matter as much as the things earlier on in the chain, I mean that about setting them to flat. Assuming that you're going to start EQing and compressing and reverberating things, you can make huge changes. There's a lot of different models of EQ and compressor that could take you all basically to the same place if you knew how to get there, but some are more fun to use than others, and some do things that others can't do. And one last quick thing before you go. If you want more from me, I have got a free mixing workshop for you called The 5 Habits of Truly Great Mixers, where you can learn the 5 habits of truly great mixers, all those common threads that I've pulled together from having studied some of the best multi-platinum selling, Grammy-winning mixers out there. If you want to improve your craft of mixing, try that free workshop, The 5 Habits of Truly Great Mixers. You can get that at sonicscoop.com/mixhabits. That's sonicscoop.com/mixhabits. If you've already checked that one out or you want something different, you can check out my free mastering workshop at sonicscoop.com/mastering101. That's sonicscoop.com/mastering101, where I'll give you the basics, the ins and outs of mastering, what's going on, what mastering engineers are really doing, and how you can get started mastering yourself if you want to. Well, this has been Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop. Thanks for hanging out with me. See you next time.